On this episode of the Chiro Blueprint, I interviewed the president of Sherman Chiropractic College, Dr. Jack Bourla, who is an amazing, inspirational individual that has a level of joy that cannot be measured, and also a sense of calmness that I believe is very important, especially in the position that he is in. He's so balanced and grounded. So I hope you all are definitely inspired and you learn a little something about one of the most impactful people in the profession of chiropractic today. Enjoy. Today on the Chiro Blueprint, I have Dr. Jack, who I am so honored to have because he's the president of one of the colleges for chiropractic, Sherman College specifically. He is a trailblazer in our profession. And I am so, like I said, honored to have him sit down and share his story. I want everyone to feel safe, comfortable, but also be authentic. All right, because we have to do more of that in our profession. So, Dr. Jack, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, for sure. I'm going to start, though, with the same question that I ask everyone, and that is, what is your chiropractic origin story? What got you into chiropractic?
Oh, boy. That's always an interesting question. I don't. How many hours do we have? It could take a while.
Ooh.
No, I'm
And you know what?
I'll give you the cliff note. How's that?
Sounds good to me.
My parents are immigrants to the United States from Algeria, North Africa, a French colony. And my father heard that the streets in America were paved with gold. And he said, I want some. So he dragged my mother across the Atlantic Ocean to New York City, from New York City to San Francisco. And so my sister and I were both born in San Francisco and raised in California. And as a Jewish boy, I really only had two choices for what I was going to do in life. One was either an attorney or a doctor. And I knew I didn't want to argue with people all day long because that's what marriage is for. So I thought I will become a doctor. And I had a really interesting story. When my father and I had a routine every morning. We would get up very early. We'd have coffee together. From the time I was about 4, I had a lot of milk and a little bit of coffee. But it was a time for us to get together. And he was ahead of his time. He was a trailblazer. So we would have breakfast. And breakfast for us would be yogurt with granola and fresh fruit. And I mean, back in the late 50s, nobody did that, but we did it. And as I began able to read, we would exchange sections of the newspaper. You don't even know what a newspaper is because you're too young, but newspapers were really prominent back then. And there were sections of the newspaper, and he would hand me a section, I would read it, and he would ask me questions. And I remember one day I was 12 years old. It was in December. I remember like it was yesterday. I read an article about a cardiovascular surgeon in South Africa named Dr. Christian Bernard. He was the first to successfully complete a human heart transplant. And that idea of how do you take a tissue from one body, transplant it to another body, and yes, you manipulate the immune system somewhat, but allow that to function. And so in the back of my mind, I always had this curiosity about what makes life life. How is it that something like that can happen? And so I went through, as an undergraduate, my bachelor's degree was in cell molecular biology. I did master's work in physiology and behavioral biology. My intention was to become a medical doctor. And I wanted to be a cosmetic surgeon for disfigured kids. I had seen Life magazine and Time magazine, and they showed these horrific pictures of these children with these just enormous disfigurements. My heart broke for them. And I thought, I want to join this organization called Doctors Without Borders that travels all over the world and takes doctors to different places of the world. And you provide free care. And that was my calling. That's what I wanted to do. And then I met a girl, got married early, and medical school was not a possibility. But I did other things. I taught at San Francisco State University in the biology department. I was a family planning counselor, ran the Stanford University Blood Center, and worked in biotechnology for 10 years. And so I had all this science background, and I was looking for a place to land. I bought 3 restaurants, which was really stupid. So I owned and operated 3 restaurants, and all the money I made in biotech, I gave back to the public. People were essentially eating for free. That was not smart. I got rid of the restaurants. I sold the restaurants. I said, what am I doing with my life? And so there was a story. And that we're getting back to the chiropractic story. There was a story that stuck with me. And that's this. One New Year's Day, my wife woke up unable to move her legs. I put her in the car. I took her to the emergency room. They admitted her. imaged her, injected her, medicated her, did all the things they thought they knew how to do. And by 3:30 in the afternoon, there was absolutely no change. Loaded her back in the car and we went home. Which the doctor said, wait and see what time might do for you. So we went back home, and on New Year's Day, I called my friends, and I happened to call one of my friends and told him what happened. And he said, why don't you call my chiropractor? I had never been to a chiropractor. I didn't know what chiropractors did. I said, Rob, what is a chiropractor going to do that this modern medical facility couldn't do? He says, I don't know, but call him. And I said, but it's New Year's Day. He says, call him anyway. So I called this guy, and he picks up. I hear kids in the background. He answered his phone on New Year's Day, and I had two thoughts. One is he's either really desperate for business to answer his phone, or he's a whack job, or maybe he's both. I explained my predicament, told what happened. He says, okay, I'll see you at 5:30 in my office. I said, where's your office? And he told me, he said, okay, I'll see you tomorrow at 5:30. He says, no, today. I said, but doctor, it's New Year's Day. He goes, I know what day it is, but I took an oath. Those words have never left my mind. At 5:30, we show up at his office. He explains what he's going to do. I had no idea. He says he's looking for this thing, which I thought was a ventricular submarine, but it was a vertebral subluxation. And he says, if she has this, I can help her. He did his examination, he took x-rays, lays her on the table. The thing went up and down, made a noise, gets on top of her, pushes into her back. This god-awful cracking sound happens, and she walked out. And I thought, holy smokes. If that can happen to her, I have all kinds of issues. I wonder what I could do with this. She and I, every Friday at 4:00, had a standing appointment in his office, which we never missed unless we were out of town or his office was closed. But we didn't go because I wasn't able to walk or had headaches, back pain, neck pain, or menstrual issues. We went because we functioned better. We had clarity of thought, slept better, had more energy. So when it came time for me to say, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I said, chiropractic. And in the San Francisco Bay Area where I lived, there were two schools. There was Palmer West and Life West. After doing research, I picked Palmer West. From the first day, I sat in those horrific blue plastic lecture room chairs. I said, this is the place that I should be when I was 22. I was 39. So I started my chiropractic journey at 39. I was the oldest guy in my class, but graduated the youngest because I sucked the youth out of everybody. So I left Palmer West, energized, ready to serve. I did really, really well in school because I had so much scientific background. But when I graduated, I said, I'm ready to serve my community. That's my story.
Which is impressive because you did all of that before 39. You were well-rounded before you even said, let me enter into this.
Yeah.
Which is great too. Because that. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. You're fine.
The interesting thing is that when we look back over our lives, no matter how old you are, you will look back and realize that every decision and person you met led you to who you are today. And that's an important observation to have and to know and to acknowledge because life doesn't just happen. I believe that life, there's a design to it. And so you gotta make the right decisions for sure. But when you look back, all the things I did, whether it was a restaurant business or biotechnology or being a counselor, a family planning counselor, those all helped me to develop skills that enabled me to be a better chiropractor. So that's how I got into chiropractic.
No, that's a very impressive story. I coach some people too. And one of the guys is young and I've told him, like, you probably can't add up all the experiences yet to see what they all mean, but they will collectively come together and you will see why you've gone through all these things.
Absolutely.
So after chiropractic school, you go to be an associate or you open your own business?
No, I opened my own business. So I haven't had a bunch of business background, having operated 3 restaurants and knowing how to do kind of customer service. I thought I can open up an office anywhere and I'm going to kill it. I found an office that I really liked. I decorated the way I wanted to have it decorated and thought I'm just going to open up my doors and people are going to come in and I have to turn them away. And so for the first 3 months, I would sit in my office waiting for the phone to ring. I had one line and the phone would ring. It was usually my mom. And I'd say, Mom, hang up. You're taking up my only line that I've got. But after a few months, it's like, hey, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And so I said, if they aren't coming to me, I better go to them. So I got a black Labrador puppy. I took a push pin, put it in the map where my office was. I drew a 5-mile radius and I told myself, I'm going to knock on every single door in this neighborhood and introduce myself. I had these door hangers made up, like for pizza, sometimes it shows up on your doorknob and you get angry. Well,
Yeah.
I had that, I had those made up with my office information, just an introduction. I'm the new chiropractor in town. And so I would take my dog, Pluto, my puppy, and we would knock on every single door. And there, if people were there, we talked to them. It was usually about the dog, but that's okay. It was my entree into a relationship.
Yeah.
I would tell them, I'm the new chiropractor in town. This is what I do, how I do it. If you feel you have a need or you want a consultation, please call the office, make an appointment. I'd be happy to see you. If they weren't there, I would hang the door knocker and go to the next one. I visited hundreds and hundreds of homes, which began to build my business. I started speaking at company health fairs. My practice was all based on referrals. I never did any advertising, even though we had this thing called the phone book, the yellow pages. I didn't advertise back then. I wanted relationships. The truth for me was that if I could engage somebody in conversation and exhibit two things, one, that I'm credible, and two, that they can trust me, then they would come to see me. That's how I built my business. My business began to build and build and build. And I had a great practice. I had the practice that I created. I saw the people that I wanted. I didn't bill insurance. It was 100% cash, credit card or check. I mean, I would take any form of payment. I wasn't relying on someone else to pay me. I was relying on the relationship that I had created to derive enough value that they felt compelled that they wanted to pay me.
Showing and expressing the value of what we do is one of the biggest things for any person, especially in a business setting, right? But definitely with chiropractic, because so many people don't understand it, which is why many are not getting it. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So we have to get the message out more. When you started your business, you had the business sense, but there's some things that are different. And I heard that there was a little bit of struggle with getting people there because they didn't know who you were.
Right.
We got to debunk that. Just because you open up and put up the sign does not mean that people are just going to come in. Were there any other struggles when you first opened?
I don't think I had any struggles. I had some disappointments. I went through this entire program and didn't really learn the business of chiropractic.
Yeah.
That was a disappointment. Here's what's great. I can take the lessons I've learned in life and assume that most people have the same type of experiences. Now that I'm at Sherman College, I don't want our students to experience the frustrations I did. We have a business curriculum at Sherman College where we teach them the various ways that you can go into business. So for me, excuse me, I wanted to be my business owner. So I was a sole proprietor. We're teaching people how to do that. We're teaching people how to become associates. We're teaching people how to become independent contractors. We're teaching them how to perhaps get into an integrative group of practitioners, or maybe even into a hospital. So there's many areas one can enter into. The question is, what makes you you? I couldn't go into an associateship because I wouldn't feel me. I could be an independent contractor because it still allows me to be me just in someone else's facility. I could not work for a hospital, for example, because the mindset of the hospital is not the mindset I have for chiropractic. Unless you're exposed to these different things, you will ensue chaos when you go out and start to develop your own business. I believe that we have an obligation as an institution, especially that takes people through a very rigorous program where they accumulate a lot of debt. And I think it's on us to at least expose them to these are the things that you need to look out for as you leave this campus and begin to become a business person, because chiropractic is also a business.
Yes, I love that. That's awesome, because most of the colleges, and I know myself and a lot of the people that I've interviewed, they went to school with me or also like around the time that I went to school with, we all have the same experience. I had the blessing of having business prior to school, managing businesses, keeping up and shadowing different providers and specialties. Being at a college that offers that is amazing.
We have talented people leading that part of the curriculum. People who have been practicing, studied, learned, and taken advice from others.
That's awesome. Because as you know, this is a part of my consulting company too. A large part of what I do is helping doctors get the business part. So I love that I can even tell people they're like, hey, I want to go to chiropractic school. Say, well, hey, if you want to get the whole thing, go to Sherman. No disrespect to life. I am definitely honored to be a life grad because it set me up to be who I am. But to know that you have that is tremendous. So thank you. That's being the change we need.
By the way, I wish I could tell you that I started, I didn't. Dr. Edward
Yeah.
Cordero, who preceded me, was the one who began to implement this. We're refining things as we go. The more we learn, the more we can impart on others. We want our graduates to leave with a high competence, confidence, and certainty in all aspects of chiropractic, the analysis, the adjustment when necessary, but also the business part of it.
I love that. As far as what you guys are doing, which is great as far as pushing the profession forward, obviously through setting a standard, but also through education. What else would you say is in development or things that need to be developed more just to make sure our profession is more successful? Just as times change, we have to grow and evolve as well. We can keep with our same principles, but we also still have to be able to have an open mind to learn things and add those things in. But what can you tell from just your viewpoint?
Technology is a big thing. For all of us, technology should be a big thing. We learned a lot going through that COVID episode. Is that it's possible to learn remotely and virtually. Is it preferable? Probably not, but it's possible. We have a department called the Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning, looking at different and better ways to educate and empower our students so their level of confidence and competence goes straight up. We're looking at that. We're using technology to enable our students to better assess vertebral subluxation. So we were the first college to have, for example, cone beam CT scan, and which is a beautiful way to three-dimensionally depict what's going on in the cervical spine specifically. We also have a thermal imaging camera, which is another beautiful way for us to look at the autonomic nervous system to see where it may be in balance or out of balance, and where there may be some excessive tension within that system. So we are using technology today. We're looking at more and different innovative technologies so that we can do the best that we can to allow these students to get through this program successfully, competently. We also want to find ways to lower our tuition. So one of the goals that I have for our college is to have the lowest tuition of any college in the world, adjusted for where we live. Obviously, it doesn't cost as much here as in Manhattan, so there's a different cost of living. I want to have the lowest tuition and pay our staff and faculty the highest, adjusted for where we live. We need to attract great faculty, staff, and students. What we do, we elevate our profession, which we are so proud of being in. And so the way we do that is by being selective in who we do business with, how we do it, and the manner in which we carry our students through the program.
I'm excited to watch it because I know it's going to happen, because that's just the type of person you are. I want to go back to you in practice. I have another question. Going through that process, how do you feel it prepared you to move to this? Because I'm not sure if you were like, hey, I'm going to be the president of a chiropractic college one day. Like, you weren't, I don't know if you were sitting around thinking that, but how do you feel like that prepared you for this?
If I had to do my life over, I would have gone to chiropractic college. Knowing what I know now, I would have gone to chiropractic college like when I was 20, if they would have let me. I would have gone through the program and I studied really hard. I graduated, topped my class. It's not to brag, because if I had to do it again, I probably wouldn't have, because I took so much time away from my family, my friends, and other things. I would have studied enough and then been humble enough to say, I don't know everything. Even with a business curriculum, I would have probably associated with somebody who I respected, who would mentor me, and who had the heart to say, yes, I want to serve you so that you could serve more. So I would have found that. I would have become an associate. And in so doing, I would have probably escaped a number of speed bumps that many of us do.
Yeah.
But I look back now, I can look back retrospectively, of course, and say, I had a great practice. I had such a fun practice. I played the music I wanted. I had the aroma I wanted to diffuse in my office. I had the decor I wanted. I had the tempo of seeing my patients I wanted. I became friends with most of my patients. I officiated 2 weddings. I went to soccer matches, bar mitzvahs, christenings, dance recitals, birthday parties, because here's what I loved. When people would say, I'm going to go see my chiropractor. That for me tells me that we have a relationship, not a subservient one, but a serving one. I believe I left chiropractic college with the heart of a servant. That's my nature. I will look at some students and say, study less, work on your heart more.
Yeah.
Because I think a heart will take you further than a brain.
I can agree with that. You got to have a little of all of those things, you know? You got to have the sense to do it, but also the compassion that many other providers might not have. Because people are coming to you as the last resort. They're at their wits' end. Sometimes you are the first person, which is also great, but you still have to have that compassion to hear and to actually want to be like, okay, let's figure out the problem instead of just covering it up. I completely agree. I've had people that have been like, you know what? You got to work on compassion, confidence. Many times those personable character traits are lacking. Many people won't even say it to people. They're just kind of, they'll figure it out. Or, you know, how are we serving each other if we aren't helping each other become better?
I totally agree. In biotechnology, I work with really smart people, one of whom got a Nobel Prize. But with the smarts came, unfortunately, a sacrifice in terms of like social behavior and manners.
Yeah.
Like some of them, I wouldn't even go out to the restaurant and have dinner with them because they didn't know how to behave. Put them in a laboratory, they're geniuses. And then in a restaurant, you don't know what you're going to get. In terms of chiropractic, we have a phenomenal education and it's rigorous. Anybody who thinks they're going to float through chiropractic college is fooling themselves. You're going to put the effort in, which is great. You have to do that. But I hope you would train your interpersonal skills. And that comes from being vulnerable and being very humble and accepting people who have other experiences than you, who could bring you along to a higher level at a faster pace.
Right. I agree. Personal development. I always tell that this is one of the things I tell every client of mine too. Your business is only going to be as great as you are. So if you're not advancing and more developing personally, that stuff will trickle over into your business. You know, like if you have bad habits personally, that's going to trickle over into your business. I love that you're in a place to say we need well-rounded providers. People forget that college is a place for remolding, right? A lot of people come to chiropractic school and they are literally changing their mindset because you are indoctrinated basically in society just because of cultural standards of being a reactive person when it comes to your health care. Or, you know, just take this ibuprofen until you can't take the ibuprofen anymore. And then you tack on something else after that. So it's a place to develop to a great doctor. And I love that you guys are doing that at Sherman.
Thank you.
Tell me this, when you were practicing, what do you feel like is the greatest difference from being over here in South Carolina as far as chiropractic goes and being in California?
Honestly, I get asked that question a lot. How did you transition? The truth is, wherever you go, you'll find your people. Just how it works. We have a rock on our front porch that's painted and says, bloom where you're planted. And that's what you got to do. So I didn't really notice a big change. I noticed a big change between private practice and academics. Chiropractic is chiropractic. And so, you know, you ask 10 different chiropractors, what is chiropractic? And you're going to get about 10 different answers. But there's really only one. And the answer has already been defined for us. It's in textbooks. And, you know, but unfortunately, we have felt the need to modify that which has been working for 128 years beautifully without us having a whole lot to do with it. So I have this talk sometimes. It's called, Who Are We to Put a question mark where BJ put a period? It has to do with the definition of chiropractic. If you look at Stevens's textbook, volume 14 of the Green Book series, it's called the chiropractic textbook for reasons because that has a lot of information. Now, granted, some of it, especially in terms of the science, has changed. The philosophy, that the foundation has remained the same because it's been proven time and time again to be valid. So the philosophy has changed. The art, how we do things has changed. The science has changed. But the definition of chiropractic is really very simple. DD, BJ, and Stevenson summarized everything, came up with the definition of chiropractic, put a period at the end of that sentence. Now, I'm a real stickler for details and for grammar and punctuation. When I see a period at the end of a statement, then that tells me that the thought's over. We're done. That's what it is. But you ask someone else in the field, what is chiropractic? And they come up with this definition, which is not even close. So my question is, who are we to put a question mark where BJ put a period? Who are we to question? If you don't like the definition of chiropractic, that's okay. Go do something else. But don't call it chiropractic, because you're confusing yourself, your colleagues, the profession, and patients that you're blessed to see. So understand what it is that we do. You're going to put your twist on how you do it. That's the beauty of being in practice. It's not, we don't call it, I'm going to my perfect. We call it, I'm going to my practice, because you're constantly honing your skills and know why you're doing what you're doing. And once you have the foundation of knowing what you're doing, I think that your level of confidence and competence goes way up.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Cool.
So after practice, how did you get to being the in my mind, most people listening don't know necessarily the path in between. So what happened? It was a blink and here you are. What happened?
I was going to retire from practice in June of 2022. My wife and I bought a house in Idaho because we visited some friends who lived there. We found this lake we really liked. We bought a house on the lake. We had our own dock. It's awesome. And so my plan was I was going to sell my practice, which I did. And then we're going to transition over into Idaho. And I was going to sit on this dock all day long and watch the fish swim by. And because I'm an older Jewish guy, what do? Well, we usually write books. So I was probably going to write a book about something. I don't know what, maybe about Danielle Jones. I have no idea. But that was my goal. That was our plan. We still have this house. Then I got a call from a friend who said, hey, did you know that Sherman College is looking for a new president? And I said, no. He goes, well, I nominated you. And I said, dude, I thought we were friends. What's up with that? So he says, give us some thought. So I talked about it with my wife and our kids. I talked about it with some of my friends and colleagues in chiropractic whose opinions I value very much. And I said, what do you think? And they said, give it a shot. So I applied and I interviewed some more. And here I am in Spartanburg, South Carolina, as president of Sherman College of Chiropractic, something I never dreamt of doing in my life. This was not part of my plan, but it was part of the plan. And here I am. And honestly, Danielle, from the day I got here, I said, if this is how I'm going to finish my career, it could not be on a higher note. This place is absolutely awesome. You don't know how awesome it is until you visit. For example, we have prospective students that come to visit us on Tuesday mornings and Friday mornings. And then we do this quarterly event called the Showcase Sherman Weekend, which is where we introduce people to who we are and what we stand for. And the one thing I tell our students is that I hope you visit all the campuses that you want to, because it's the most important decision that you'll ever make in your life. And here's the thing. If you decide that you want to be a chiropractor, that's an intellectual decision. It's like when you go to buy a house. I want to buy a house. You say, I'm going to buy a house and this is what I'm looking for. And then you visit some houses. And when you leave that one house you want, you say to yourself and to those around you, that house felt right. And that's what I want people to have here. I want them to feel the vibe that we have here at Sherman, so that when they leave, they say, that's where I want to go. That's where my tissues resonate. I'm going to hum there. And so if you want to hum with our vibration, you got to come visit. And so I encourage everybody who's interested in becoming a chiropractor, come to the campus. It's easy to get here. This is a beautiful community. I live in a forest. In California. I could put my hand out my window and shake hands with my neighbor. We were that close. This is so different out here. And so, we're not out in the boonies, but we have land. We have clean air. We don't have congestion. We paid $2.45 a gallon for gas, the same gas I was paying almost $6 for in California. The cost of living is different out here, but the most important thing, Danielle, is this: the vibe at Sherman College is unlike any other place that I've ever been or ever will be. And so I invite people, even if you don't want to be a student, if you just want to kind of get energized.
I'm going to come either way.
You're 2.5 hours away.
No excuse. It's not that far from me, Georgia. So yeah, I'm definitely closer.
Great.
I feel like you've given me so much anyways. Every time I do this, especially with great minds, I'm like, oh God, they give me so many things I want to ask. So, but number one is to the person that is in practice right now, and they might not be feeling that that vibe you were talking about, that energy. What would you
Yeah.
say to them?
Find a coach.
How important is that? Did you have
I,
one you were in practice?
I had several coaches when I was in practice. I hired my first coach before I even opened my practice. I was a graduate with a fair amount of debt, paying $600 a month, betting that this person is going to take me over the threshold of success. And they did. I think, look at the fine, and this, people know this, but look at the finest athletes in the world. They all have a coach.
Yeah.
Everybody has a coach. You know who one of my favorite coaches is Deion Sanders. I don't know if you know who he is, but Deion Sanders
Yes,
was
no, I don't
kudos.
know. I don't know who that is.
If you lived under a rock long enough, you probably don't know who he is. But I try to listen to him every time I can. Everything that comes out of his mouth is just, it's platinum. It's the best of the best. We all need that. It doesn't mean that you're inadequate. It means you want to get better.
One of the biggest things that I feel like it's a mindset thing. Like you said, like a lot of times people think, oh my God, how am I supposed to have this other bill? But it's flipping the value. If you don't have that, you won't be as successful. That's the point of having a coach. I tell people sometimes, which you guys have not done, you're doing a better job of it, which we just discussed. But a lot of times people have gone to chiropractic school, and I compare it to football. We're like the football players, the chiropractors. We've gotten all this cheering. We've gotten the plays, but nobody's told us how to implement the plays, right? So where's the coach to do that? Because that's what the coach does. They say, you do this play now, run this play. That one didn't work for you. So let's change that, So thank you for definitely reiterating because I had that too coming out. And sometimes people will be like, well, how is she successful doing this? And it's like, well, listen, I did have the business before, but I actually had two coaches when I started, one for operations and one for personal development. I had somebody making sure my head was in the game, and I had somebody that can say, I don't know, I got this fire in the practice, and I think I know how to figure this out, but I'm going to trust you know a better way. Tell me. I cannot stress enough the importance of mentorship, coaching. There are different things, so you need both.
You do.
That's great. Thank you.
You do. Yeah. so I'll tell you, Danielle, and people who've been around long enough have heard this. They say you are the sum total of the 5 people you hang out with.
Yeah.
If you find that you're stinking, take a look at the people you hang out with and find those who will raise your vibration, who will raise your expectation to a higher level than you're currently experiencing. Because if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, we know what happens. Same result, insanity. Understand that we are pretty smart people. Anybody who's gone through a chiropractic program has got to have some level of smarts. You just may not have the application of the smarts. So surround yourself with those people who you respect and who have the qualities that you're looking for to develop within yourself. And you can just by hanging out with them and breathing in their DNA, you're going to get some of that by osmosis. More importantly, mimic the people whose habits have led them to a much higher level of success and competence than you have. There's nothing wrong with saying, I'm not where I want to be yet, but you've got to use that word yet. Because a mindset, right? Your brain's listening to everything you think and say and do. And if you're saying negative things, your mind's going to reinforce the negative things. So if you say, I'm not at that level, always make sure you say yet, because that gives your brain hope and it will work to get you to that yet.
My next question to you is, Jack today versus Jack getting out of chiropractic school. What are the top 3 things you would tell him, knowing what you know now?
1, be patient. You gotta be patient with yourself. 2, I would have expanded my circle of friends to the level where I just described, to the people who I want to be more like. It's easy to fall into complacency and comfortable. But there's an expression. Sometimes you have to comfort the disturbed, and sometimes you have to disturb the comfortable. If you find that you're comfortable, it's time to raise your desires a little more. Because comfort, BJ Paul used to say, as soon as you think you're ripe, you begin to rot. I would have had more patience with myself. I would have changed the circle. Not that the circle I had was bad. They just weren't taking me to where I wanted to go. And the other thing I would have done, is I would never have sacrificed time away from my family like I did. I took way
Yeah.
too much time away from my wife and children. I can't get that time back. One thing I hate hearing from my kids is, Dad, you weren't around. I don't want anybody to experience that. I would rather give up any perceived success to have my kids say, Dad, I really appreciate the time we got to spend together. So those
Yeah.
are the 3 areas I think for me, and I can't speak for everybody.
Those are really profound. Even my dad was in a different profession, but there were times where I feel like we're all like fixers, right? At the end of the day, we're fixers. What I do for a living now, even with coaching and consulting, I'm a fixer. But he
Yeah,
was that in education, and sometimes it would take a toll. There were things he was not there for, and it did make a difference. And he tried, as we got older, and my nephew, he was there more for him because he realized he should have been better with my time so that I could
yeah,
have given more time with my family. So that those are
yeah,
profound, and I'm glad that that's beautiful for you to even share it, because some people don't even want to even share something like that. But moving forward from where you are now, you're going to stay obviously at Sherman as long as you see fit. What else would you like to do? Is there something, another area where you feel like I need to pour more into this or this group of people?
yeah. I would love to be known as someone who did a great job for Sherman. I think that's a very noble thing to do. I don't do it myself. I've got a team I work with. Absent them, I'd be gone by now. The people you surround yourself with, I inherited these people, and we're all developing together, which is a great thing. But when it comes time for me to be done, because there will be a time, I'm a
Yeah,
realist, there will be a time when I won't be at Sherman anymore. I will then move all my energy into becoming the world's leading authority on kindness.
that's a
Big
big
thing.
thing. I love that.
Yeah, if you look at my library, I've got a whole library on kindness, benevolence. I'm a product of the 60s. And that was a time where there's a counterculture revolution and stand up for the people and all that. But I
Yeah.
was raised, I think, or maybe it's just my genetics, where I have a very high level of empathy and compassion. Thank God
Mhm.
my kids did the same thing. I've got 2 kids that have the hearts like you wouldn't believe. And I'm proud of them for that alone. I don't care if they went to Princeton, Harvard, Yale, or any of the big colleges. I wouldn't care. I would rather they have the qualities of being kind and empathetic and compassionate.
Yeah.
But as we look at what's going on in our society, and I hope we do, we have to counterbalance that with kindness, empathy, and compassion. When I'm finally done, have written a book or developed something to help others, I would do it just for the sake of doing it. I don't need to be paid for this, but I would like to start a movement to reestablish kindness that we all have within us, but many of us are afraid to show because they think it's a level of weakness, which I think is caca.
Yeah,
I think it's caca. Can we say
it is,
caca?
sis.
Okay. Okay.
You're fine.
Um,
Yes.
so, I think that, when you strip away the ego, we're left with vulnerability offset by kindness. I don't think you can be overly kind. I don't think you can be
Yeah.
overly empathetic. I don't say, roll over and be weak, put someone else before you and see what that does. One of the things I've done, Danielle, is my son and I, when we lived in California, would go to the same place for breakfast every Sunday morning. And
Oh,
because we loved what they did. It was a greasy spoon that most people probably wouldn't eat. And I don't care. We
yeah.
liked it. But before we went there, we would stop by and I would get my cup of Starbucks coffee. When my son was little, we would go to Starbucks. I trained him to open the door for other people and to look around to see if anybody else was coming, to wait for them to go through the door first. And if you go through, look behind you to see if they
Mhm.
go. He says, Dad, why should I do that? I said, son, sometimes that's the only compassionate gesture someone will see all day. Maybe for them, it's validating. It means something. So now he does that. He opens the door for people. People are shocked the teenage boy does that. But for me, that's a parental win. You need
Yes.
those.
At least you gave him an explanation. I grew up in the South, so there's like, that's you being a gentleman, period. That's
Yeah.
the end of the story. You just do it. I love that because it is gestures of kindness. We all need to do more of that throughout the day.
Right.
So before we hop, is there anything that you want to share that I may not have asked about?
I think we covered a lot. As chiropractors, we have a calling to serve. Do so with kindness at the forefront. Do it with a servant's heart. Do it with the understanding that you're not fixing anybody. You're not You're not saving anybody. When I hear about people saving them, no, that's a higher power. You're not that good. But what you do is you change someone's neurology. And when you change someone's neurology, you enable them to experience life at a different level. I hope people go into chiropractic knowing that they're not God, knowing that they're not saving anybody, knowing they're not fixing anybody, but they're performing a very important thing. And is you become really good at the analysis of the nerve system and spinal structure. And when necessary, use your expertise to enable the body to correct that misalignment, that vertebral subluxation. And then you let the body do what it's going to do. You let that person experience life as they're supposed to. You do that, and you're not going to be chasing back pain, neck pain, sciatica, amenorrhea, all that stuff. You don't have to follow those things apart. You're just enabling someone to experience life as intended. And when you do that, society changes. I hope people in chiropractic understand it's not about the crack, and it's not about the massage. It's not about pulling someone's leg. It's about being really, really conscientious about the good you can do. Let the body do what it will and get out of the way.
Well, what an ending. I have nothing to say. I appreciate you. That was all said perfectly. Even going back to the fixers, we view ourselves like that. And it's not something we need to do for sure, because it's not our role to be the savior. So that's putting your ego out of the way, right? I just got to do my part and let their body do the rest, what God designed them to do. Thank you for coming on.
For having me.
No, I feel like I'm obviously going to have you more than once, because we got to talk about some more of the developments later on. But I love the energy you bring to whatever you do. So thank you so much. I appreciate you.
This was fun. Let's do it again. All right.